Hi guys, so we're going to start chapter 1 today. This one's about atoms and matter. There will be 3 videos during chapter 1 because there's 3 major topics in chapter 1. Alright, so the first thing, just remember that matter is composed of particles, and matter is defined as anything that has mass and takes up space. Alright, also keep in mind those subatomic particles, those protons, neutrons, and electrons. We'll get to those in our second video. And then chemistry is just the understanding of matter and its properties. So atoms, those are those basic subatomic particles, and they're the building blocks of all matter. Okay, those will be on the periodic table, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Molecules are 2 or more atoms that bond together. Okay, so atoms are single units, molecules are more than one. Just some things to remember about states of matter. So there are 3 states that we're going to discuss in chemistry. So the first one is solid. Those particles are tightly packed together, and you can see them in this picture here that they're tightly packed. They do vibrate in that space, but they pretty much stay in that one location. Liquids, they have more space to move around, but they're still pretty close, but they can move around each other, and that's why liquids can flow. And then gases, these gas particles here are much farther apart, and notice they fill the entire container. So for solids, what you need to know is that the molecules are closely packed, okay? Also that they vibrate, and that they have a fixed volume and shape, or that they have a rigid shape. That just means this pen that I'm using to write on my screen, it keeps its shape regardless of what container I put it in. So when I put it in my laptop case, it keeps its shape, it still looks like a pen. Liquids, on the other hand, they are packed close together, but not as closely. And what's here is they're free to move relative to each other. So there's some space to move, just not a ton. All right, they do have a fixed volume, but not a fixed shape. And that's why liquids take whatever the shape of their container is, because they don't have a specific shape, it's just whatever the container is. Also, it's important to note, this is what makes them flow or move in between each other in the molecular state. Gases, on the other hand, have lots of space. Okay, they do not keep their shape, so they take the shape of the container. Also, they take the volume of their container because they fill the entire container. If they didn't, we couldn't even breathe in a room because there wouldn't be oxygen over the whole room. Okay, so that's important to note. These are free to move around completely because there's lots of space. And also, they're compressible. This just means you can squish them down. So as you see in these pictures at the bottom, the solids are not compressible because you can't squish them any. But those gases, you can definitely squish those gases. So it's just important to note that gases are compressible. The next thing we're going to be discussing is matter. And there are 2 types of classifications that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on pure substances and mixtures. So a pure substance is made up of only one component, and its composition does not change. So these are going to be elements and compounds. A mixture, on the other hand, that's a substance that's composed of 2 or more components. Again, pure substances are elements and compounds. So elements will be found on periodic table. And I'm going to abbreviate periodic table PT. Compounds are made of elements. So I'm going to say made of 2 or more elements. All right, and then an element is something that cannot be chemically broken down. It's super important. Okay, once you break an element into its pieces, it's no longer an element. It's just random protons, electrons, and neutrons. So that's why we say it cannot be broken. A compound has 2 or more elements, but it's in those fixed proportions. That just means that something like water is always going to have 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And something like glucose will always have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. And if I change one of those numbers, it's no longer that compound, it's something else. Mixtures are also categorized into 2 types. There's heterogeneous and homogeneous. A heterogeneous mixture has varying composition, so it's made of multiple substances, all right? And you can normally see the pieces. The way I describe this normally is you can physically pick out the pieces. Like your hand can pull pieces out. So this is like Chex Mix. Okay, I do not like those rye chips. I pick them out. Or if you don't like raisins and trail mix, you can physically pick those out. Those are common heterogeneous mixtures. A homogeneous mixture is one where it seems like it's the same because you can't see the pieces, but they're in there and they can be pulled out, but you physically with your hands cannot pull them out. So maybe you need to filter it, or maybe you need to like decant it or separate it. Decanting's like if you had oil and water, you could pour off one layer. Okay, so those homogeneous mixtures or homogeneous, they have uniform compositions, and that means you cannot pick out the pieces. So sweet tea and unsweet tea look the same, but one of them's got sugar in it. Both are homogeneous mixtures. One just has more mixture in there, okay? And that is it for today. Y'all have a great day.